Hi, and welcome to the Dr. Carl Callender Visiting Writer Series show. My name is Suzanne Parker. I'm part of the faculty here at Brookdale, where I run our creative writing program and also our Visiting Writer Series. Today on the show, I am absolutely thrilled to have Michael Deagler, whose debut novel, Early Sobrieties, was a New York Times editor book choice. Michael's fiction has appeared in Harper's Magazine, McSweeney's Quarterly Concern, Electric Literature's Recommended Reading, and elsewhere. He is a recipient of a National Magazine Award, as well as fellowships from the Fine Arts Work Center and the Kimmel Harding Nelson Center for the Arts. So, Michael, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
And I had a fear that I mispronounced your name. Did I get it? Deagler?
Deagler, yes.
I got corrected right before.
It's not pronounced for that.
Well, congratulations on Early Sobrieties.
Thank you.
It's just amazing. Now, this is your first book out, correct?
It is, yes.
Yeah? How has it been to be having it launched into the world?
It's been great. It's been so nice. It's kind of nerve-wracking during the publishing process and wondering how it will be received. But once it's out, it's kind of just people saying nice things to you all the time, Like if they don't like it, they just don't tell you. So it's a very, sort of affirming experience.
Did you have that moment where you got your box of author copies?
I did, yeah.
And you opened it up?
It was exciting. Yeah, I remember being like shocked at how many they sent. I got like 30 of them, and then it's like, where do I, they like filled a whole shelf in my apartment, and it's like, this is, a lot.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. It is absolutely wonderful.
Thank you, yeah.
So do you want to tell us a bit about the book, its characters and story?
Sure, yeah. It's sort of semi-autobiographical. It's the novel follows a 26-year-old guy who he's recently gotten sober. He's a recovering alcoholic. It starts when he's around 6 months sober and kind of follows him through the next 6 months, kind of over the course of the spring and summer of this, first year of his sobriety. And it's sort of based on my own experiences getting sober in my mid-20s. There are a lot of, within literary fiction, there are a lot of depictions of alcoholism. And I had read a lot of them before I got sober and after I got sober, and I was writing a lot about alcoholism, like sort of active alcoholism. And at some point I kind of felt like I had maybe explored that part of it as much as I wanted to, and the actual process of sobriety itself was starting to feel like a lot more interesting to me. Just because I kind of like, I had seen alcoholism depicted so much. I hadn't really seen sobriety depicted very much, and because I had not seen it depicted very much, I was kind of more surprised by it, like how it just sort of felt to move through the world kind of in this new headspace that I was in. And so, yeah, it felt like unexplored territory kind of in the best way, which is, I think as a writer, you're always kind of looking for that aspect of life that hasn't already been written about to death, so that you can kind of maybe try to, find something new to say.
I think it was Electric Literature, possibly in an interview. You talked about addiction literature and recovery literature, and I wondered how you were defining those, or how the tropes are different then.
There's a long history of like the writer or the novelist as an alcoholic is kind of like we have a long tradition of this in American literature, going back to even like Hemingway or F. Scott Fitzgerald. We think of these kind of hard drinking writers who, and in earlier generations, people didn't really get sober. They kind of just kept drinking until they couldn't really write anymore, or they died.
Yes.
But there's kind of this tradition of there are all these great novels and story, through like Cheever and Raymond Carver, Tom Jones was a short story writer who I liked a lot, who wrote a lot about these sort of drunk characters, and then Dennis Johnson and Jesus' Son, which is more about I think the main character in that's a heroin addict, and Irvin Welsh, Train Spotting, which is a great book about heroin, so there's all these great. That's kind of what I think of as addiction literature. They're books about characters who are currently actively indulging their sort of addiction to these substances, and if sobriety comes up at all, it's normally like sort of an eye of the storm where they like relapse quickly, or they'll get sober at the end, but then, it's kind of like a happy ending and then the book ends.
Yeah.
And then in terms of recovery literature, I mean, there's a whole genre that's kind of called sober lit or recovery lit. But that tends to be a lot more nonfiction, the inspirational memoir, self-help.
Yeah.
Not to denigrate it, but it tends to be like more. It's this is how I got sober. This is how you can get sober, which is sort of a separate thing.
Sure.
But in terms of sobriety, as the subject of literary fiction, I think there isn't. It's not as robust a tradition.
Is that partly because in a story of addiction, there might be more inherent drama as people sort of, hit rock bottom and all the rest of it? If I remember correctly, you said somewhere in an interview that one of the challenges of writing about recovery is it can be boring.
Yeah, it's very boring. And that's sort of like that's kind of the first hurdle that you have to deal with as a writer. Addiction is like very dramatic. It's sort of explosive. It's violent. People are making bad decisions. Like as a writer, they tell you like get your characters into trouble, make your characters make bad decisions, like to generate plot. So addiction is like kind of the perfect writer's trick for like, how do I get this guy to do something like self-destructive, that then everyone else will sort of react and be mad at him, and he needs to like navigate that.
So what was your strategy to take all those opportunities away?
Yeah, well, it kind of just came from my own life where, you get sober and you kind of think that that's going to solve all your problems, and yet I found that I still had like a lot of problems, and I still had a lot of tension with people. It was just like now the tension it's slightly subtler, and it doesn't have the kind of mask of alcoholism over top of it. So really it's like all the tensions that would be there in a good addiction story, which are still like interpersonal tensions that are to do with things other than addiction. Once you remove the addiction factor, all that stuff is still there. And you as a writer, you just have to like kind of figure out how to dramatize it a bit more than you would under other circumstances.
Gotcha. Did you feel any sort of, because as you said, this is based in part upon your own experiences, did you feel any obligation to the material to sort of represent it in a way that maybe would correct misconceptions, or any sort of, I'm doing something here that a lot of people will not possibly have read before?
Yeah, I think I wanted it to feel true to my experience, which I think I didn't. I'm trying to think of how to put this. There was like I think when the way that sobriety is often portrayed in the media is like it's really filtered through the kind of rituals of like 12-step programs.
Sure.
You know, we've all like seen scenes in movies of like somebody in an AA meeting, somebody like talking to their sponsor, you know, working the steps, making amends. There's sort of or somebody in rehab, you know, where you're kind of institutionalized for a little while. And my personal sobriety like experience did not include any of that. And I think that's kind of true for a lot of people. Or again, like even if even if you do all those things, like there's a lot more to it than just that kind of like the skeleton of Alcoholics Anonymous or whatever. So I really wanted to try to avoid that, both because it's cliche, but also because I think that can take the place of the actual kind of emotional architecture of sobriety.
It would also seem to, in a way, kind of limit, you know, I know just from what I've read, you know, you would think this is the way to do it. You go to AA.
Yeah.
But it's not the only way. How people change, evolve, recover from an addiction takes many shapes and forms.
Yeah. And I think, and I have no problem with AA. It seems like it works. AA is just sort of leading you through this kind of journey of self-discovery and self-forgiveness that I think you can. There are a number of different ways to get to that place, and I think, especially in fiction, like trying to present a less like kind of prescribed, less predictable, like journey of someone. I think there's like a utility in that.
I think so too. Yeah. And we get to read the path of our narrator as he moves through this, which we will talk about more when we get back from break. I'm talking to Michael Deagler about his new book, Early Sobrieties. Please join us after the break.
Discover limitless opportunities at Brookdale, ranked the #1 community college in New Jersey. Unlock your potential with nearly 70 associate degree programs, including cutting-edge courses in our cybersecurity center, and join our competitive esports team. Elevate your educational journey with Transfer Pathways, now connecting you to a variety of prestigious New Jersey universities and colleges. Brookdale, where access, affordability, and support open doors to your future. Visit brookdalecc.edu today.
Getting involved on Brookdale Community College's campus is an integral part of your educational experience. There is something for everyone. We have over 50 clubs and organizations, complemented by multiple events that happen on campus, whether it be lectures, bands, comedians, or just special events. It is statistically proven that students that get involved have a higher GPA, have a higher academic success, have more retention, and also complete their college degree. So when you come to Brookdale, there is something for everyone, so get involved.
Hi, and welcome back to the Dr. Carl Callender Visiting Writer Series show. I'm Suzanne Parker, part of our English faculty here at Brookdale, and I'm here today with Michael Deagler talking about his debut novel, Early Sobrieties. So welcome back.
Thank you.
You were talking about how some of this was based in your own lived experience. And I wonder if, as you were writing the book, if any of it felt as you were writing, did anything feel too close, too raw, too uncomfortable, like I can't go there?
Yeah, I think.
And then did you put it there anyways?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because I never really worried too much about like me and the character being kind of associated with each other, or like making, having the character do something that could like reflect poorly on me. But it was more like the other characters, many of whom are like based on other people that I know, or interactions that I had with them, or and some things are just like stories that I heard that I kind of like brought into the novel. But that was kind of the stuff that I was more reluctant to put in, or at least to try to like mask a bit more, just because like it's all fiction, but I think you don't want to do anything where it feels like you're being unfair to
Sure.
to someone. But they always tell you when you're writing, you have to, like, if something kind of feels too sort of dangerous or painful or emotionally fraught, that's normally like the direction you want to write into.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of there's that perennial balance of like wanting the work to be good without like creating any problems for yourself in the life outside of the book.
Well, it's funny that that segues into the book is so beautifully realized. I mean, the main character is moving from apartment to apartment, couch to couch, friend's place to former friend's place, and just Philadelphia and the place and the settings are so vivid. And
thank you.
Each chapter is kind of an introduction of a new, often, cast of people. It all feels so incredibly lived in. So I wondered if you would maybe share just a couple of paragraphs maybe from the second chapter for us.
Sure, yeah.
Thanks.
So in this chapter, the main character Monk he's just been kicked out of his parents' house, and now he's staying in South Philadelphia with a friend of his. So it's called Pat's Geno's. That summer, someone decided to erect pop-up beer gardens in the unused lots throughout the city, which offended me in a way that I found difficult to articulate. They were affected, trendy places with trendy beers for trendy people. Not my scene, even if I'd still had a scene. There was one in the lot across from Pat's King of Steaks, beneath a crumbling mural of Frankie Avalon and Fabian and some other teen idols from the early 60s. I was sitting at one of Pat's picnic tables with my friend Boris Spang, and those teen idols were staring me right in the face. At some point, everybody had moved to South Philadelphia. I suspected it was initially a practical decision. It was a reasonably priced section of the city, with neighborhoods that were more or less intact. There were bakeries, bars, sandwich shops. The row houses were quaint in a pre-war proletariat sort of way, with garlands of Christmas lights strung between them all 12 months of the year. Once the first hipsters planted their flag, South Philadelphia became the cool place to live, particularly east of Broad in the old Italian wards. But I don't have to explain to you how gentrification works.
Great, thank you. So Philadelphia is is a character, it feels like in this book. And I wonder what your relationship is to Philly. And was it important to you to set the book there?
It was, yeah. I grew up in the suburbs outside of, in Bucks County. My parents are from Philadelphia. I'm from like a long line of Philadelphia people. And I always, like growing up in the suburbs, I always kind of wished I was in the city. And for college, I went to Temple University, so I moved down there and lived there for most of my 20s. So there was the landscape of Philadelphia was kind of also like the landscape of my, like the kind of bad years of my drinking and of my early sobriety. So kind of my relationship to alcoholism and to sobriety are kind of very closely tied with Philadelphia. And then also there's sort of like the perennial like Philadelphia chip on your shoulder that like there's not, like there should be more Philadelphia books, there should be more Philadelphia stories. Like the city is not as represented in the media and in like literature specifically, which is always like kind of a long-held frustration for me. Although I mean, and that has changed like in the last couple of years, especially. There's been like a lot more Philadelphia books, almost like too many now. But yeah, I certainly sort of felt like not like it's too narcissistic to call it like an obligation, but like wanting to like write a good like Philadelphia book to like try and capture the city on the page in sort of a way that I hope is reflective of like what it feels like to
Oh gosh,
live
you really
there.
do. And I love that because we follow the narrator as he moves, again, he's kind of crashing with friends or former acquaintances. So each chapter is a new lodging, a new place for him. So we move through all these neighborhoods, some of which are the titles of the chapters. So you do actually kind of get a very strong sense of Philly and the place. But it made me wonder how you landed on this sort of structure for the novel. That, you know, with each new chapter, we've got, here's the new situation for our narrator.
Yeah. Well, it started out as short stories.
I wondered,
Yeah. And I was, because I always considered myself a short story writer. And that was kind of like the form that best sort of, like, I don't know, I just felt drawn to, like, the kind of stories I wanted to tell seemed to, like, unfold over, like, 15 to 20 pages. And I've always been really attracted to like, short story cycle kind of books, like The Things They Carried or A Visit from the Goon Squad, where you're kind of, like, seeing the same characters, but over, you know, in these different episodes that don't necessarily... Like they cohere into a larger story, but not in like a novelistic way. And I thought there was something about that really lent itself to talking about sobriety and the kind of idea of like, you know, one day at a time, which is sort of the old like AA maxim where sort of each, because we have Dennis Monk, who's the main character, but he's pretty much the only character that is through the whole book. And the structure of the novel is that he kind of keeps like staying with people, and then for various reasons he has to stay with somebody new in each chapter, which as a writer is like very useful because now you have like a new environment and new characters for him to kind of like interact with and to kind of dramatize different aspects of the kind of the issues of sobriety. But it's also kind of like, I looked at it as each chapter was kind of like a new opportunity for him to like, to live his sobriety, you know, in the one day at a time thing where it's like, okay, you sort of, he's messed up this situation, but in the next chapter there's a new situation and new like opportunities to grow or to like make better decisions or you know.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, to me, experiencing it, he's in such transition, trying to like kind of deal with his past in a way, see what he's going to bring from that forward, but then also having to create what his future will be, where he'll be. And to me, that transitional space really resonated. And I thought it was interesting how you put me as the reader into that kind of transitional space myself, because every chapter I had to start fresh again too. I hadn't met these people.
Yeah.
And so I was unable to get settled in the same way that he is in a place of being unsettled as he kind of tries to figure out how he will move forward. So I thought that was just really brilliant, how kind of that restarting kind of mimicked the position he was in.
Yeah,
I loved that.
I appreciate that interpretation. Yeah, yeah. Everything is in flux, kind of.
Yeah. So you said you thought of yourself as a short story writer. You know, as we kind of finish up, now that you do have a novel, only because it's linked short stories, has that opened up the possibility for the next book to be, or maybe a future book being a novel? Does it appeal more now?
I hope so. Well, now I feel like I'm, because this became a novel like fairly late in the process. So like now I feel like I've kind of cheated a bit, where like I'm technically a novelist, even though really like I wrote like sort of a short story collection. So now I want to write like a proper novel, where
Proper.
a more traditional novel.
Yeah.
Just almost to prove to myself that I can do it. But
Well, wonderful. Well, I look forward to it when
thank
you do.
you. Yeah,
So
yeah.
hurry up, get ready. It is a wonderful book. Thank you so much for joining
yeah,
us.
thank you for having me.
And so again, I've been talking to Michael Deagler. His book is called Early Sobrieties, and is out. And thank you for joining us. If you'd like to know more about our creative writing program, the Visiting Writer Series, or joining us to take a class, check us out on our website. And thanks for watching.